Zara-chan wiped down the bar counter for the third time that evening. The cloth moved in steady circles across the metal surface, but her mind was somewhere else. 3 years had passed since the war ended, but the crossroads station still felt like a powder keg waiting to explode. Every day brought new challenges as former enemies tried to share the same space. The Nexus Cantina sat in the heart of the station's civilian sector. It was one of the few places where humans and dragons could drink together without someone calling security. The owner, a gruff human named Marcus, had strict rules about fighting. Break something, pay for it. Start a fight, get banned for life. Simple rules that somehow worked. Zara looked around the cantina. The usual crowd filled the tables and booths. Human traders sat near the back, talking quietly about shipping routes and cargo prices. A group of Centauri merchants played cards in the corner, their blue skin glowing softly in the dim light. 2 dragon civilians sat at a small table, drinking something that smoked when they breathed on it. Everyone kept to themselves. That was how things worked here. You minded your own business and everyone went home happy. The door chimed as someone entered. Zara looked up from her cleaning and felt her stomach drop. 5 dragons walked through the entrance, but these were not the peaceful civilians who sometimes visited. These dragons wore the scars of war. Metal plates covered missing scales. One had a cybernetic eye that glowed red in the darkness. Another walked with a slight limp from an old wound, but it was their scales that made Zara's hands tremble slightly. Deep red markings covered their hide in specific patterns. She knew those patterns from the war broadcasts, from the memorial walls, from her nightmares. These were Emberwing Squadron veterans. The cantina fell silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. The human traders looked toward the exit. Even the Centauri merchants stopped their card game and watched carefully. The 2 civilian dragons at their table suddenly became very interested in their drinks. The leader of the group was massive, even by dragon standards. He stood nearly 8 feet tall with wings folded against his back. His red scales gleamed with an inner light that pulsed when he moved. This was Commander Thexvar, a name that every human in the galaxy knew and feared. Zara forced herself to keep cleaning the counter. Her hands shook just enough that the cloth made tiny squeaking sounds against the metal. She could feel every eye in the cantina watching her, waiting to see what she would do. The dragons chose a large table near the center of the room. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never learned to fear anything. Their talons clicked against the floor as they walked. Their eyes swept the room, noting every exit and every potential threat. Zara took a deep breath and walked over to their table. She pulled out her small tablet and tried to keep her voice steady. "Welcome to the Nexus Cantina. What can I get you to drink?" Commander Thexvar looked down at her with eyes like molten gold. "Aldebaran whiskey," he said in a voice like distant thunder. 5 glasses. The good stuff, not the watered-down garbage you serve to civilians." "Coming right up," Zara said. She turned to walk back to the bar, feeling their eyes on her back like laser sights. Behind her, the dragons began talking in their own language. Zara had learned some Draconic during her xenolinguistic studies, enough to understand the basic meaning of their words. They were discussing the cantina, the other customers, and her. "Weak humans," one of them said. "Look how they shake and hide." "The war made them soft," another replied. "They forgot their place in the galaxy." Commander Thexvar laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "They were always soft. That is why we burned their colonies so easily." Zara's hands tightened around the whiskey bottle as she poured their drinks. Several human customers had already left, placing credits on their tables and walking quickly toward the exit. The Centauri merchants packed up their cards and followed. Soon only the dragons, Zara, and a few stubborn regulars remained. She carried the tray of drinks back to their table. Her training kicked in, the professional mask she had learned to wear during her 2 years working at the cantina. "Smile politely. Don't make eye contact for too long. Get the order right. Don't give anyone a reason to complain. 5 Aldebaran whiskeys," she said, setting the glasses down carefully. "Will you be ordering food tonight?" The youngest dragon, one with green-tinted scales and a scar across his snout, looked up at her with interest. "You smell afraid, little human. Your scent betrays you." Zara set down the last glass and straightened up. "The kitchen closes in 30 minutes, but we have fresh steaks and roasted vegetables available." Commander Thexvar leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his weight. "She pretends to be brave, but her hands shake. Do you know who we are, Waitress?" "Your customers," Zara replied simply. The same as everyone else, this made the dragons laugh. The sound filled the cantina like distant explosions. The few remaining customers looked nervous and began finishing their drinks quickly. The same as everyone else, the scarred dragon repeated. How amusing. We are Emberwing Squadron, girl. We burned your colonies. We destroyed your fleets. We sent thousands of your kind to their graves. Zara nodded politely. Will you be paying with credits or station currency? Her calm reaction seemed to amuse them even more. Commander Thexvar stood up slowly, unfolding to his full height. His shadow fell across the table like a dark cloud. I think she does not understand, he said to his companions. Perhaps she is too young to remember the war properly. He turned back to Zara, his golden eyes gleaming. I am Commander Thexvar of the Emberwing. These are my wingmates. We flew together for 7 years during the war. We destroyed 43 human ships. We burned 6 colonies. We killed more of your kind than you have years in your short life. The cantina was completely silent now except for the soft hum of the air recyclers. Even Marcus, the owner, had retreated to his office and closed the door. Zara was alone with 5 of the most dangerous killers the galaxy had ever known. She looked up at Commander Thexvar without flinching. That's very interesting. Will you need anything else, or can I bring you the check? The dragons exchanged glances. This was not the reaction they expected. Humans were supposed to run or beg or at least show proper fear. This small female seemed completely unconcerned about their reputation. Tell me, little waitress, Commander Thexvar said, leaning down until his massive head was level with hers. Why are you not afraid? Do you not believe the stories about us? Zara met his gaze steadily. I believe them. Then why do you not run? Why do you not call for security? Zara picked up the empty tray and balanced it against her hip. Because running won't change what happened, and security can't bring back the dead. Commander Thexvar straightened up slowly, studying her with new interest. There was something in her tone, something that suggested she knew more than she was saying. You speak as if you lost someone in the war, he said. Everyone lost someone in the war, Zara replied. Both sides. She turned to walk back to the bar, leaving the dragons to consider her words. Behind her, she could hear them talking quietly in their own language, but their tone had changed. The casual arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been curiosity. Zara reached the bar and set down the tray. Her hands were still shaking, but not from fear anymore. Something else was building inside her chest. Something that had been waiting 3 years to be released. She picked up a clean glass and began polishing it, watching the dragons in the reflection of the mirror behind the bar. Commander Thexvar was still staring at her, trying to figure out what made her different from the other humans he had terrorized. Soon, she thought, he would understand. The dragons had been drinking for an hour when things started getting worse. Commander Thexvar and his wingmates had emptied 2 bottles of Aldebaran whiskey, and their voices were getting louder. The alcohol seemed to make them more talkative and less careful about who might be listening. Zara continued her work, cleaning tables and serving the few customers who had not left. A pair of human engineers sat near the back trying to mind their own business. An elderly Centauri diplomat nursed a single drink at the bar, occasionally glancing at the dragons with worried eyes. The scarred dragon, who Zara had learned was called Kessitar, noticed her walking past their table. He reached out with one clawed hand and pointed at her. You, he said, his words slightly slurred. Human female. You still smell of fear. Zara paused and looked at him politely. Can I get you anything else to drink? Fear has a very specific scent, Kestar continued, ignoring her question. Sweet and sharp like metal in the rain. All humans smell this way when they see us. Another dragon, this one with a cybernetic wing, laughed and nodded. It is the smell of prey animals when they know death is near. We learned to recognize it during the war. Commander Thexvar took a long drink from his glass and smiled, showing teeth that could tear through steel plating. It is one of the few pleasant memories from those days. The moment when human soldiers realized they were going to die. Zara felt something cold settle in her stomach, but she kept her expression neutral. The kitchen will be closing soon if you want to order food. She pretends not to hear us, Kessitar said to his companions. But look at her hands. See how they tremble? Her body knows what her mind refuses to accept. The dragon with the cybernetic wing leaned forward. Tell us, little human. Did you lose family in the war? Friends? A lover, perhaps? Most people lost someone, Zara replied carefully. But some losses are more personal than others, Commander Thexavar said. He stood up and began pacing around their table, his massive form moving with surprising grace. Would you like to hear about some of our victories? Perhaps we destroyed someone you knew. The few remaining customers were trying very hard to pretend they could not hear the conversation. The human engineers had their heads down, talking in whispers. The Centauri diplomat was slowly moving toward the exit. We had many glorious battles, Commander Thexvar continued. 43 ships destroyed. 6 colonies burned. Countless smaller engagements where we showed humans the true meaning of superior firepower. He stopped pacing and looked directly at Zara. One of our finest moments was at a place called Haven's Rest, a small outer colony with delusions of importance. They thought their orbital defenses could protect them from the might of Emberwing. Zara's hand tightened around the cleaning cloth she was holding, but she said nothing. The battle lasted only 3 hours, Kessitar added with obvious pride. Their defense fleet was pathetic. Old ships with weak weapons and scared crews. We destroyed their main platform first, the cybernetic dragon said. Always eliminate the strongest threat before dealing with the smaller ones. Basic tactics that humans never seem to understand. Commander Thexvar nodded approvingly. Then we moved on to the softer targets. Supply ships, transport vessels, civilian craft trying to escape. And the medical frigate, Kessitar said with a laugh. That was almost too easy. They could not fight back, could not run fast enough, could not hide behind their useless shields. Zara stopped moving. She stood perfectly still, the cloth forgotten in her hands. Medical ships are forbidden targets under galactic warfare conventions, she said quietly. The dragons looked surprised that she had finally spoken up. Commander Thexvar tilted his massive head to one side, studying her reaction. Warfare conventions are for species that can enforce them, he said. Your Federation was losing the war. Your fleets were scattered and weak. What were they going to do? File a complaint with the Galactic Council? Besides, Kessitar added, medical ships can be converted into warships very quickly. We were simply being cautious. That medical frigate was treating wounded civilians, Zara said. Her voice was still quiet, but something had changed in her tone. Wounded humans who could recover and fight us again, the cybernetic dragon replied. We saved ourselves future trouble by eliminating them. Commander Thexvar walked closer to Zara, his golden eyes gleaming with interest. You seem to know specific details about this battle. How curious. Were you there, little waitress? No, Zara said. I was not there. Then how do you know about the medical frigate? Haven's Rest was a minor engagement, barely mentioned in the war records. Most humans have forgotten it ever happened. Zara looked up at him, and for the first time that evening, she met his gaze directly. I have not forgotten. The cantina fell completely silent. Even the background hum of the air recyclers seemed to fade away. The dragons sensed that something important was happening, but they did not yet understand what. Tell me more about that battle, Zara said. I am curious about the details. Commander Thexvar smiled, pleased to have found an audience for his war stories. It was one of our more efficient operations. We jumped in system at dawn local time. The humans had placed their defense platform at the second Lagrange point, protecting the main shipping lanes. We came at them from the dark side of the primary moon, Kestar said. They never saw us until our first volley took out their sensors. The defense fleet tried to form a battle line, the cybernetic dragon added. 3 destroyers and a light cruiser. Good ships, but their crews panicked when they realized who they were facing. We destroyed 2 destroyers in the first minute, Commander Thexvar continued. The cruiser lasted longer, but only because it kept running away. We finally cornered it near the 4th planet. And the medical frigate? Zara asked. A converted cargo hauler, Kessitar said dismissively. No weapons, weak shields, engines that could barely push it to half light speed. It was trying to reach the jump point when we caught it. The crew surrendered immediately, the cybernetic dragon said. They transmitted their medical status and begged for mercy under the Centauri Accords. Commander Thexvar laughed. We ignored them, of course. Mercy is for the strong, not the desperate. Zara nodded slowly. And after you destroyed the ship? What happened then? We took our trophies, Commander Thexvar said proudly. Scale samples from enemy weapons that managed to wound us. Bioluminescent ink from our victory tattoos. Genetic material for the war archives. He rolled up one arm to show a section of scales that glowed with soft blue light. Each mark represents a significant victory. The Haven's Rest operation earned me 3 new tattoos. Traditional dragon warriors mark their achievements on their bodies, Kessatar explained. The ink contains biomarkers that respond to our emotional state. When we feel pride or anger, the tattoos glow brighter. It is an ancient custom, the cybernetic dragon said. Our ancestors believed that carrying the memory of battle on their skin would make them stronger in future fights. Zara looked at their glowing tattoos with new understanding. So every dragon warrior carries biological samples from their victories. In a way, yes, Commander Thexvar said. The ink is created from our own genetic material, processed and enhanced to respond to our biorhythms. It becomes part of us just as our victories become part of our identity. How interesting, Zara said softly. And what happened to the bodies from Haven's Rest? The humans you killed? Vaporized with the ship, most likely, Kessatar said with a shrug. Though I believe some debris was recovered later. Yes, Commander Thexvar said thoughtfully. I remember hearing something about salvage operations. The Federation sent ships to collect whatever remained. Waste of resources, in my opinion. The dead should stay dead. Zara nodded again and turned back toward the bar. Thank you for sharing your memories. It has been very educational. As she walked away, the dragons exchanged confused glances. Something about her reaction did not make sense. She had asked specific questions about the battle, but her responses seemed too calm for someone who was simply curious about history. Commander Thexvar watched her go with growing suspicion. There was definitely more to this human waitress than appeared on the surface. Her knowledge of the battle was too detailed, her questions too focused, her reactions too controlled. He decided it was time to find out what she was hiding. Zara reached the bar and set down her cleaning cloth with careful precision. Her hands had stopped shaking, but not because she was less afraid. Something else was taking control now, something that had been sleeping inside her for 3 years and 4 months. Behind her, she could hear the dragons talking quietly among themselves. They were speaking in Standard now instead of Draconic, which meant they wanted her to understand. There is something strange about this human, Kessatar was saying. Her questions were too specific. Perhaps she is a war historian, suggested the cybernetic dragon. Some humans make careers studying battles. No, Commander Thexvar said firmly. Historians ask different questions. They want to know about tactics and strategy. She asked about the medical frigate specifically and about what happened to the bodies. Zara picked up another glass and began polishing it. The motion was automatic now, giving her hand something to do while her mind raced through memories she had tried to bury. Maybe she lost someone at Haven's Rest, Kessatar said. A relative or friend aboard one of the ships? Possible, Commander Thexvar replied. But if that were true, she would be more emotional. Humans cannot hide their feelings the way we can. They wear their hearts in their expressions. The elderly Centauri diplomat had finally decided to leave. He placed credits on the bar and walked quickly toward the exit, not looking back. The human engineers were finishing their drinks and preparing to follow him. Soon Zara would be alone with the dragons. Why do you not ask her directly? The cybernetic dragon suggested. Humans cannot lie convincingly to us. Their scent changes when they are dishonest. An excellent idea, Commander Thexvar said. Zara heard his chair scrape against the floor as he stood up. Little waitress, come here. Zara set down the glass she had been cleaning and turned around. Commander Thexvar was walking toward the bar, his massive form casting shadows across the cantina. His wingmates remained at their table, but their eyes were fixed on her with predatory interest. You asked very specific questions about Haven's Rest, Commander Thexvar said as he reached the bar. Why does that particular battle interest you? I like learning about history, Zara replied calmly. Commander Thexvar leaned against the bar, bringing his golden eyes level with hers. I do not believe you. Your questions were too focused, too detailed. You wanted to know about the medical frigate, about the crew, about what happened to the bodies. Those seemed like important details. Important to whom? Commander Thexvar studied her face carefully. Are you a journalist? A researcher? A government agent? I am a waitress. Yes, but what were you before you became a waitress? Commander Thexvar's voice carried the tone of someone accustomed to getting answers. What did you do during the war? Zara considered her options. She could continue lying, but dragons were excellent at detecting deception. She could try to change the subject, but Commander Thexvar seemed determined to get answers. Or she could tell the truth and see what happened. I was in school, she said finally. What kind of school? University. I was studying xenobiology and linguistics. Commander Thexvar tilted his massive head to one side. Interesting subjects. Did you specialize in any particular species? I was working on a thesis about dragon physiology. This made the dragons at the table look up with surprise. Studying enemy biology during wartime was considered either very brave or very foolish. Dragon physiology, Commander Thexvar repeated slowly. What aspects specifically? Genetic markers and bioluminescent properties in scale pigmentation. Ah. Commander Thexvar's eyes began to glow slightly brighter. You were studying our victory tattoos. Among other things. For what purpose? Zara met his gaze steadily. Academic curiosity. Commander Thexvar laughed, but the sound had no humor in it. I think not. During wartime, humans did not study dragon biology out of curiosity. They studied it to find weaknesses. The war is over. Yes, but your studies were not. You speak of dragon tattoos with too much knowledge. You know about the bioluminescent ink, about the genetic markers, about how our emotional states affect the pigmentation. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her face. Tell me, little waitress, what did your research discover? Zara looked past him at his wingmates. They had all turned their attention to the conversation now, sensing that something important was developing. Nothing useful, she said. I find that hard to believe. Human researchers are very thorough when they want to be, and during wartime your government would have provided unlimited resources for any project that might help win the war. Commander Thexvar straightened up to his full height. Who funded your research? The military? Intelligence services? Weapons manufacturers? Does it matter now? It matters to me. Commander Thexvar's scales were beginning to pulse with a steady rhythm. If you were developing weapons against my people, I have a right to know. Zara sighed and set down the glass she had been holding. The research was never completed. The war ended before any practical applications could be developed. But you did find something useful, did you not? I found many interesting things about dragon biology, such as... Zara looked at him for a long moment, then made her decision. I found that dragon victory tattoos contain complete genetic profiles of the warriors who wear them. I found that the bioluminescent ink is created from neural tissue and carries memory engrams. I found that dragon DNA is remarkably stable and can be extracted from scale fragments even years after death. The cantina fell completely silent. Even the background noise from the station corridors seemed muffled. Commander Thexvar stared at her with a mixture of surprise and growing anger. You studied our sacred traditions. To find ways to violate them, he said slowly. I studied your biology to understand how you work. For military purposes, for survival purposes. Zara's voice carried a slight edge now. Your people were burning human colonies. Our ships were being destroyed faster than we could build them. Our soldiers were dying by the thousands. And you thought you could even the odds by desecrating our war trophies. I thought I could help save lives by understanding our enemies better. Commander Thexvar's eyes were fully ablaze now, casting golden light across the bar. His wingmates had risen from their table and were walking toward them, their own scales beginning to glow with anger. Tell me, Commander Thexvar said in a voice like distant thunder, what did you plan to do with this knowledge? Zara looked at all 5 dragons surrounding her. They were magnificent and terrifying, living weapons forged by millions of years of evolution and shaped by decades of warfare. Any one of them could kill her without effort. But she was no longer afraid. I plan to make you pay for what you did to my mother, she said quietly. The words hung in the air like an unexploded bomb. Commander Thexvar blinked slowly, processing what she had just said. Your mother? Dr. Sarah Chen, chief surgeon aboard the medical frigate at Haven's Rest. She died when you destroyed her ship. Understanding began to dawn in Commander Thexvar's golden eyes. The woman who refused to evacuate her patients. You remember her? I remember a human female who broadcast a message before we fired the killing shot. She said something about protecting innocent lives and war crimes. Zara nodded. That sounds like her. She was very brave for a human, Kessitar said from behind Commander Thexvar. Most of your kind beg for mercy when death approaches. My mother did not beg, Zara said firmly. Even when she knew you were going to murder her and 47 other medical personnel in violation of every galactic warfare convention. We were at war, Commander Thexvar said. Such considerations are luxuries for those who can afford them. Yes, Zara agreed. You were at war, and so was she. She looked around at all 5 dragons, meeting each of their gazes in turn. The difference is my mother won. The dragons stared at Zara in confusion. Commander Thexvar's golden eyes narrowed as he tried to understand what she meant. Your mother won, he repeated slowly. We destroyed her ship. We killed everyone aboard. How is that victory? Zara reached under the bar and pulled out a small datapad. She set it on the counter between them and activated the display. A holographic image appeared showing a woman in a white medical coat standing in what looked like a laboratory. Dr. Sarah Chen, Zara said. Xenobiologist, surgeon, and apparently a better strategist than anyone in Ember Wing Squadron. The dragons looked at the image with growing unease. Something about Zara's tone suggested they were not going to like what came next. My mother knew she was going to die, Zara continued. When your squadron jumped into the Haven's rest system, she understood immediately that the medical frigate would be targeted. Dragons do not respect non-combatant status during warfare. We could not take chances with potential threats, Kessitar said defensively. Of course not. And my mother knew that. So instead of trying to run or hide or beg for mercy, she did what any good scientist would do. She collected data. Zara touched the datapad and the holographic display changed. Now it showed detailed biological diagrams, genetic sequences, and molecular structures. During the 3 hours between your arrival and the destruction of her ship, my mother managed to analyze scale fragments, blood samples, and neural tissue from the 3 dragons your squadron lost during the engagement. Commander Thexvar's neck frills flared in surprise. Impossible. Our fallen wingmates were retrieved and given proper burial honors. Yes, but not before they bled on the medical frigate's hull during the fighting. Not before scales were scraped off when debris from your damaged ship struck her vessel. Not before neural tissue was scattered when one of your pilots was killed by defensive fire. The cybernetic dragon stepped forward, his artificial eye glowing brighter. You are saying your mother studied our dead? I am saying my mother studied your biology while you were busy committing war crimes. Zara's voice remained calm, but steel had entered her tone. She had 3 hours, a fully equipped laboratory, and the knowledge that she was about to die. So she worked. What did she discover? Commander Thexvar demanded. Everything. Zara touched the datapad again. Dragon genetic structure. Neural pathway mapping. Bioluminescent ink composition. Cellular regeneration patterns. Weakness points in scale armor. Vulnerabilities in your respiratory system. The display showed increasingly detailed biological information. Gene sequences, protein structures, anatomical diagrams that revealed secrets dragons had never shared with other species. She transmitted all of this data to the Federation military database before your final attack. Zara continued. 47 terabytes of information about dragon biology, uploaded to a secure server just minutes before you murdered her. The cantina was dead silent. Even the station's background hum seemed muffled. The dragons stared at the holographic display with growing horror as they began to understand the implications. That data became the foundation for every anti-dragon weapon developed during the final year of the war, Zara said. Kinetic rounds designed to penetrate scale armor at specific angles. Bioweapons that could disrupt dragon neural systems. Tactical programs that predicted flight patterns based on wing structure analysis. Commander Thexvar's scales were pulsing rapidly now, cycling between red and gold as emotions warred inside him. The Federation's sudden technological advancement in the war's final phase was based on information my mother extracted from your dead wingmates, Zara confirmed. Your ink, your scales, your blood, your neural tissue, everything she needed to understand how dragons worked and how they could be stopped. Kessitar backed away from the bar, his scarred face twisted with disbelief. The bioweapons that forced our retreat at Proxima Nebula developed from genetic markers my mother discovered in dragon blood samples. The kinetic rounds that could pierce our battle armor, designed using scale density measurements and structural analysis data. The tactical computers that seemed to predict our every move, programmed. With behavioral patterns extracted from neural tissue examination, Commander, Thexvar slammed his massive fist on the bar, cracking the metal surface. Your mother turned our own dead against us. My mother used what you gave her, Zara replied without flinching. You brought dragon corpses to her medical frigate. You scattered biological samples across her laboratory. You gave her 3 hours to work with material that your empire had kept secret for thousands of years. The cybernetic dragon was staring at his own glowing tattoos with new understanding. Our victory marks. They contain genetic information from every battle. Yes, Zara said. And when Admiral Harrison's fleet surrounded your task force at Proxima Nebula, they were using weapons designed with information extracted from those very tattoos. Your victory marks became the key to your defeat. She touched the datapad one final time. The display changed to show battle recordings from the war's final engagement. Dragon ships fleeing from human weapons that seemed almost supernaturally effective. Every time you fired on a human ship, our tactical computers analyzed your flight patterns and predicted your next move. Every time our bioweapons activated, they targeted genetic vulnerabilities my mother discovered in your dead wingmates. Every time our kinetic rounds penetrated your armor, they struck at precisely the angles she calculated would cause maximum damage. Commander Thexvar was breathing heavily now, his massive chest rising and falling like a bellows. The surrender at Proxima Nebula, we were not simply outfought. We were betrayed by our own biology. You were defeated by the same arrogance that led you to attack a medical frigate, Zara corrected. My mother did not betray your biology. She simply studied what you carelessly left behind. The dragons looked at each other with expressions of dawning horror. Everything they thought they knew about their defeat was wrong. They had not lost due to human technological superiority or numerical advantage. They had lost because a single human doctor had 3 hours to examine their dead and the intelligence to understand what she was seeing. The war ended because of your mother, Kestar said slowly. The war ended because you gave my mother the tools she needed to end it, Zara replied. If you had honored medical neutrality and left her ship alone, she never would have had access to dragon biological samples. If you had not spent 3 hours systematically destroying every other target in the system, she never would have had time to complete her analysis. She leaned forward, her eyes bright with a light that matched the glow of dragon scales. If you had not murdered 47 innocent medical personnel in violation of galactic law, my mother might have died peacefully in her sleep years later, taking her knowledge of dragon biology to the grave. Commander Thexvar stared at her with something approaching respect, mixed with rage. You are saying that our victory at Haven's Rest caused our ultimate defeat. I am saying that my mother spent her final hours turning your greatest triumph into your empire's greatest disaster. Zara smiled for the first time that evening. She died knowing that every dragon who celebrated your victory at Haven's Rest was carrying the genetic information that would eventually destroy your entire war effort. Your victory tattoos glow when you feel pride or anger, she continued. Every time you looked at those marks and felt satisfaction for murdering her patients, you were celebrating the very thing that would lead to your empire's surrender. The dragons stood in stunned silence, processing the magnitude of what they had just learned. Their proudest moment had been their greatest mistake. Their most celebrated victory had been the beginning of their ultimate defeat, and it had all been planned by a human doctor who knew she was going to die and decided to make her death count. For a long moment, nobody moved. The dragons stood around the bar like statues, their scales flickering with confused patterns of light as they processed what they had learned. Commander Thexvar stared at the holographic display, watching battle footage that showed his empire's final defeat over and over again. Zara reached over and turned off the data pad. The images disappeared, leaving only the soft lighting of the cantina and the glow from dragon scales. Now you know, she said quietly. My mother has your ink. Every genetic marker, every biological secret, every weakness your species tried to hide for thousands of years. She extracted it all from your fallen wingmates and used it to end your empire's expansion across the galaxy. Kesitar was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. All this time we thought we had won a glorious victory at Haven's Rest. You did win, Zara replied. You destroyed every human ship in the system. You burned the orbital platforms. You killed everyone aboard the medical frigate. By every measure that matters to dragon military doctrine, it was a perfect victory. But my mother turned that victory into a weapon against you. Every drop of dragon blood spilled at Haven's Rest became intelligence data. Every scale fragment became a key to unlocking your biological defenses. Every piece of neural tissue became a map of your behavioral patterns. Commander Thexvar slowly sank into his chair, which creaked under his weight. Your mother was a brilliant strategist. She was a doctor, Zara corrected. She never wanted to be a strategist or a weapons designer or a military intelligence asset. She just wanted to save lives and study interesting alien biology. Then why did she do it? Because you gave her no choice. Zara's voice carried no anger now, just tired sadness. You attacked a medical frigate filled with wounded civilians and non-combatant personnel. You violated every rule of civilized warfare. You forced a peaceful researcher to become a warrior. The cybernetic dragon was staring at his artificial parts with new understanding. The bioweapons that damaged my wing. They were designed using information from our own dead, neural pathway analysis from a pilot named Kethmore. If I remember the records correctly, his tissue samples provided the genetic keys needed to disrupt dragon nervous systems. Kethmore was my wingmate for 6 years, the cybernetic dragon said softly. We flew together in dozens of battles. He died trying to ram the medical frigate when our weapons failed to penetrate its shields. His sacrifice probably saved my mother an extra hour of research time, Zara said. When his ship exploded against the hull, it scattered biological material directly into her laboratory. She was able to extract genetic information that would have taken days to obtain through normal analysis. The dragon closed his artificial eye and was quiet for a long moment. He died to help destroy the human ship, but his death actually helped humans develop the weapons that crippled our fleet. War is full of ironies, Zara observed. Commander Thexvar looked up at her with an expression she had never seen on a dragon's face before. It might have been shame. Your mother died because of our actions, he said slowly, and our empire fell because of her response to those actions. Yes, she turned our moment of triumph into our ultimate downfall. Yes, using nothing but scientific knowledge and 3 hours of time. And 47 terabytes of biological data extracted from your fallen wingmates, Zara added. Do not forget the importance of good source material. Despite everything, this made Kessitar laugh. The sound was bitter and confused, but it was definitely laughter. A human doctor with a laboratory defeats the mighty Emberwing squadron without firing a single shot. She did not defeat you, Zara said. She just made sure your victory was temporary. Commander Thexvar stood up slowly and walked to the window. Beyond the transparent aluminum, he could see the stars and the ships that moved between them. Human vessels and dragon cruisers shared the same shipping lanes now, following traffic patterns established by treaty rather than conquest. The war has been over for 3 years, he said without turning around. Why are you telling us this now? Because you came into my workplace and started bragging about murdering my mother, Zara replied simply. Because you expected me to be afraid of your reputation and impressed by your war stories. Because you thought humans had forgotten what you did to us. And what do you expect us to do with this information? Zara considered the question carefully. Whatever you think is appropriate. Commander Thexvar turned back to face her. We could kill you for what your mother did to our empire. You could try. Station security would stop us before we could escape. Maybe. Or maybe I have other surprises prepared. Just like my mother did. Commander Thexvar studied her face, looking for signs of deception. You are not afraid of us anymore. No, Zara agreed. I am not afraid anymore. Why not? Because fear serves no purpose now. My mother is still dead. Your empire has still fallen. The war is still over. Nothing I do or say can change any of that. She picked up her cleaning cloth and began wiping down the bar again. But understanding changes things. Now you know why you lost. Now you know that your greatest victory contained the seeds of your ultimate defeat. Now you know that sometimes the people you think are helpless are actually more dangerous than the ones who carry weapons. Kessitar laughed again, but this time the sound held genuine amusement. A lesson we should have learned before we attacked a medical frigate. A lesson your empire learned too late, Zara corrected. You learned it at Proxima Nebula when bioweapons designed from your own genetic material forced your fleets to surrender. Commander Thexvar walked back to the bar and sat down. He looked smaller now, as if the knowledge of his defeat had physically diminished him. What happens now? He asked. Now you finish your drinks and pay your tab, Zara said. Then you leave my cantina and decide what to do with the rest of your lives. And you? I continue working here, serving drinks to anyone who can pay for them and follow the house rules. Commander Thexvar reached into his coat and pulled out a credit chip. He placed it on the bar next to his empty glass. Your mother was an honorable enemy, he said formally. Her death brought no shame to her species. Thank you. And you? He paused, searching for the right words. You have honored her memory well. Zara nodded and picked up the credit chip. She glanced at the amount and raised her eyebrows slightly. This is enough to pay for drinks for everyone in the cantina, she said. Then serve drinks to everyone in the cantina. Commander Thexvar replied. To fallen warriors on both sides and to the living who must find ways to honor their memory. For the next hour, the impossible happened. Humans and dragons who had entered the cantina as enemies began talking to each other as individuals. Stories were shared, not of glorious victories or bitter defeats, but of small moments that revealed the person behind the warrior. Commander Thexvar told a human engineer about his childhood on a farming world, before the war made him into a killer. Kester shared a drink with a Centauri trader and discussed the difficulty of finding good food on long space voyages. The cybernetic dragon played a card game with two human mechanics, who were impressed by his artificial eye's ability to spot marking patterns. Zara continued serving drinks and cleaning tables, watching former enemies discover that they had more in common than either side had expected during the war. It was not friendship exactly, but it was the beginning of something better than hatred. As the evening wound down, Commander Thexvar approached the bar one final time. This has been educational, he said. I'm glad you found it worthwhile. Will you be working here tomorrow? I work here every day. Then perhaps we will return. There are more conversations that need to happen. Zara smiled, and this time it was genuine. The Nexus Cantina is always open to paying customers who can follow the house rules. Commander Thexvar nodded and walked toward the exit, followed by his wingmates. At the door, he paused and looked back. Your mother would be proud, he said simply. After they left, Zara continued cleaning up from the evening service. The cantina was quiet again, but it felt different now. Something had changed. Some barrier had been crossed that could not be uncrossed. She thought about her mother, working frantically in a laboratory while dragon weapons tore her ship apart around her. Dr. Sarah Chen had died believing that her research might help save human lives. But she never knew that her final hours of work would end the war itself. Now her daughter carried that legacy forward, not through weapons or warfare, but through the simple act of serving drinks to anyone willing to sit at the same table and remember that enemies were still people. It was not the victory her mother had planned for, but it was perhaps the one she would have wanted most.